What's up, guys? It's the League Dad, and I want to welcome you all to another episode of the All In Podcast, a podcast for casual leaguers. Today, we have a patch notes rundown. Patch 9.12 dropped, and so we're going to give you all the inside information you need to know to help you climb on the Rift. I have two very special co-hosts today. First is Nighthawk. You guys know him. He's a regular on the show. And a newcomer, my man, my duo partner, who likes to throw all of my games when he plays with me. His name is Grandy Man. We call him Dan the Man. Grandy Man, it's a tradition here that whenever we have a new co-host, they give us a little bit of info about themselves, their history with League, who their favorite champ is, and currently where they're at as far as their climb goes. So if you could, just give us like a brief minute or so introduction on yourself and your history with the game.
So I believe I started League around late season 2. And then right now I'm at Platinum 4. I like playing Jinx a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
I like it when you play Jinx, actually.
but I'm feeling really confident on Kaiser right now.
Kaiser, yeah, Kaiser's pretty beast. Honestly, I played duos with this guy playing Kaiser and his Jinx. They're both really on point. His Lucian's a different story, but I won't give him too much grief on that. But no, it's a good ADC, and I'm glad to have him as my friend and a co-host here. Nighthawk, how your game's been going, man? You've been having a good time on the Rift? Uh-oh, I think Nighthawk is gone. Did Nighthawk DC? All right, well, while we get an update on Nighthawk, today, like I said, we are doing patch 9.12, so we got a lot of stuff to discuss, so we're going to jump right into it. Obviously, the biggest change for today, for this patch, is the Mordekaiser drop. The new Mordekaiser has dropped. It's out. I don't know if you guys have seen videos or whatever, but if you haven't, it's really a cool rework that they've done. I think the Reddit buzz was that pretty much looking at Mordekaiser, especially the ultimate, it looks OP. And if you don't know what his ultimate does, basically can take somebody out of combat, out of the game for a brief time just to 1v1 them. And there's so many uses for that, especially in competitive play. So what are your thoughts here on the new Mordekaiser, Dan? Have you tried the new Mordekaiser yet?
I have not tried a new Mordekaiser.
Let me see. Okay, he's coming. So you haven't tried it yet. I actually played a couple of custom games with the new Mordekaiser, and it was pretty busted. Obviously, it's a custom game, but just trying his abilities, he really does feel like a good AP bruiser. I've heard the analogy compared to someone like an AP Darius, because he can get on top of you, he can stick on you, and he can basically... oh, he's back. What's up, man?
There we go. I had to change the server region. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Wrong with USD.
No worries. So I was just we were talking about Mordekaiser and just how I tried him in a couple custom games just to get a feel of his abilities. And honestly, he feels really OP. Again, I don't know. This is a new champ. I mean, just his ult alone is crazy, but the fact that he has a grasp, he has a shield, which is crazy, which he had before, but it's still really good. And then his passive, just being able to stick to your opponents and do damage around all the people around you, that's pretty amazing. What are your thoughts on the new Mordekaiser so far? Have you tried him out yet, Nighthawk?
Yeah, I've when he first came out on PBE, I tried him out, and he felt absolutely ridiculous. I think I played a couple games with him today, just to make sure that he still felt really good.
Yeah.
I think this is a champion that will probably see some form of hotfix nerf. He's very good. He can play in almost every role. You'll see him in the top lane. You'll see him in the mid lane as a counter to low range champions. He can actually be played in the jungle because his passive works on jungle camps.
Yep.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
This champion's incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I think the biggest implication of him being OP is his ult, right? It almost feels to me like a Ryze ult in a sense that, but Ryze ult, but even better, like, because I feel like in solo queue you could still do amazing things with this. But even in competitive, I can't imagine the kind of uses it's going to get out of it. And I was just explaining that, again, his ultimate basically takes one person out of a fight and Mordekaiser 1v1s them in kind of the death realm, or is that what it's called? I don't even know what it's called, but he's basically in another world. Yeah, the death realm. I don't know what it is. But they 1v1, and so like I just think of Baron dances or dragon dances when you're fighting for, you know, waiting to get one of these objectives, and Mordekaiser just goes in there and takes out the jungler. You know, like, I don't know. There's so many uses I feel like that's going to come about here with the Mordekaiser ult. But we have yet to see. It's still really early, but that is, I think, the biggest thing that has dropped on the Rift. So if you haven't done so already, definitely bring him on the Rift. I know people have you seen him in any of your games yet, Nighthawk?
He gets banned a lot, so the only times I've been able to play him is in blind pick. Which is not really the best time to check him out, but hey, he feels really strong. I think just to add on to what you were saying, the ult is incredible, and there's going to be like a lot of uses for that. But I think the passive is a big part of the reason why he shines so strong.
Oh yeah,
just because any fight that lasts longer than 2 to 3 seconds will go very well in Mordekaiser's favor, just because of that passive. So.
Yeah, and if you guys are unfamiliar with the passive, if you hit a champion with 3 times with either your auto attacks or abilities, he gets movement speed, but he also gets this thing around him that does magic damage over time. So he's doing AoE damage. He moves fast, and he hits like a truck with his Q. And then he has his E to pull everybody in. So again, just a lot of stuff in his kit. But I've seen him in a couple of games. Dan, have you seen him in any of your games so far? And what you played? Since 912 dropped off.
I haven't played a game actually, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so you haven't seen anything. I know in my rank flex games, I've seen him a couple times. I try to ban him out really, but you know, the few times that he's gone through, it's been bonkers. I don't like playing against it, and I've had one on my team which we almost won, but we threw. But anyways, it's a different story. So TLDR. Pick up Mordekaiser, OP, probably going to be a hot fix, but it's a fun champ. I really do like the kit, and I don't know how Riot will balance around that ult, but time will tell. Next change, what do you want to talk about, Nighthawk? What's the biggest thing on your list as far as this patch drops? A lot of stuff.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing in this patch is probably Ryze, but I don't... Does anyone here know anything about Ryze? Does anyone play Ryze?
So I don't play Ryze like exclusively. I know vaguely a little bit. But I honestly, from what I've just heard, is that it's supposed to be a hard nerf to Ryze. And they're trying to make it so that he can flourish a little bit more in solo queue, but kind of not so much in competitive. We can go over the changes and see what that is. But before we do that, why don't we talk about someone we probably do know a little bit more about, and that's Sylas, because Sylas definitely got the nerf bad as well. And let me just read it off real quick. So the passive now stores up to 2 charges. Base damage increase, AoE damage less effective against minions. The Q detonation damage and AoE range decreased on minions. W heal increased, E shield adjusted, and cooldown increased. And so basically it seems like what they're trying to do is take swings at the aspects of his kit that are more powerful than pro. Such as the on-demand nature of his shield and his AoE wave clear. Let's look at his passive. Petricite Burst, so new. Charges, now stores up to 2 charges, which will be consumed on subsequent basic attacks. So the base damage was also changed. It was at 5 scaling to 47.5, and now it's 9 scaling up to 60. And another new thing is that minions are friends, so it deals 70% less damage to minions. And before his passes, which that whenever he used an ability, his next auto attack would do AoE damage. Is that correct, Nighthawk or Dan? I don't play too much Sylas.
It does like a big if you play Nocturne or well, Nocturne, it's basically his passive, but it's up every time you auto attack or every time you use an ability.
Yep. So basically, you would want to use an ability, attack, that sort of thing, just to proc that many passives. Now it stores up to 2 charges instead of just being up all the time. The Q chain lash. So the detonation damage has been nerfed. It started at 45, scaling to 145 with plus 0.6 ability power. Now it starts at 40 and scales to 120 plus 0.4 ability power. And then the detonation AoE was 200 range on minions. Now it's 180 range on minions. Any thoughts on that? Either of you? I don't really know the implications here on the minions or the detonation damage, to be honest.
The whole point of these changes were to... Sylas obviously is a very versatile champion. He gets played in a lot of different roles, and he gets played by a lot of different... I liken him a little bit to like Akali 2.0. So he's sort of getting the same Akali treatment, I think. They're going to keep sort of giving him a little bit of nerfs, and then maybe give him some buffs back in future patches. But the focus for these nerfs were to reduce his free wave clear, because he's a melee champion, which they're technically supposed to be a little less good on wave clear than ranged champions, especially ranged mages. So these changes were toning down his wave clear, which the Q change definitely does, and then making it so that his E wasn't so ridiculous when trading with people in lane. So
that makes a lot of sense.
I think that he'll still be pretty good, but he definitely loses a little bit of his free abilities. Now he actually has to like engage to get the shield. And he can't just mindlessly clear waves forever.
Yeah, let's talk about his E's. So the Abscon Abduct. So the Abscon's shield no longer shields himself for 2 seconds on the first cast. That's been removed completely. The cooldown has actually gone up. So it was 18 scaling down to 10. Now it's 18 scaling down to 14. Now the shield, the Abduct shield, it grants an 80 to scaling up to 220 plus 1 ability power shield on enemy champion or monster hit for 2 seconds. So yeah, I don't really understand that. It grants a 80 to 220 shield on him.
So previously what happened was when he E'd, it was like a ribbon shield, so the shield would go off instantly. Now he just moves a shorter duration, and the second cast, when it connects with somebody, he gains the shield. So it's going to force him to, instead of using it like a ribbon shield where you can just use it to dodge damage or
he has to
absorb a big blow, you actually have to go in and to get that shield, which is going to make him a lot less stronger into poke lanes, which is another good weakness for a melee champion to have. But it also might grant him some form of jungle potential, just because the shield does still work on monsters, and because of how the new passive works, we might see... Sylas jungle was already kind of cringe. You could see it, but now that his regular play was nerfed, you might see him more in the jungle now.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Oh,
go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I think we're gonna see a lot more Sylas jungle since like the shield got he no longer shields himself for 2 seconds on first cast. So.
I have to. Yeah. I'm going to double check. I don't know if the shield's actually bigger than it was previously. If the shield's bigger, then it's not just a straight up nerf, which is good, I guess. But if it's the same size, then it pretty much is still a straight up nerf.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. It doesn't say directly on the patch notes. But while you're looking that up, real quickly, I guess to compensate for some of these quote-unquote nerfs, they buffed his W Kingslayer a little bit. So the heal, it was 60 scaling to 140 plus 0.4 ability power. Now it's 70 scaling to 150 plus 0.5 ability power. So some of that healing is going to come back up, which was what made him very annoying early on when he first got released. And so they nerfed that. Now they're kind of giving it a little bit of a buff. And I guess just because of some of the other nerfs they did. But I did have some experience today on stream and even off stream playing with a guy in Flex who was a Sylas main. He didn't even know Sylas got nerfed, and before the game in Champ Select I was like, hey, they nerfed Sylas, and he's like, oh really? He's like, man, that sucks, I'm a Sylas main. And then he played him. He still wrecked shop, right? Granted, it was like silver 3, silver 4 in Flex, but I asked him about it, and he just said that he definitely could feel the nerfs, but at the same time, he felt like he was, it wasn't completely unplayable. So if you're a Sylas main or looking to get into Sylas, that was just one perspective from somebody who plays him quite a bit. So were you able to find the shield, Nighthawk?
Yeah, the base shield went up by 20 on every level, and then the AP ratio went up by 10%. So it's a decent buff, but it's not like insanely strong.
Okay, and I guess that makes sense because if he has to connect with somebody to proc the shield. He's going in. So I would assume he would probably need a little bit bigger of a shield because it makes him a lot more vulnerable.
Oh, actually, correction. It went up by 20 at level 1, scaling up to 40 at level 5. So 20 to 40 plus 10%.
Okay. Yeah, so I think just a little bit different. You're just going to have to work a little bit around some of his skills. But for me, that's my opinion. Do you think this kind of takes him out, Nighthawk, or do you think he's still... okay.
I definitely don't think he'll be quite as versatile as you saw him. He probably won't be pick ban anymore in high-elo and in LCS. He's going to require a little bit more finesse to play well, and it definitely takes away his really strong abilities to just be very consistent. So, but I think he'll still be good. I don't think he's dead.
Okay. Dan, do you got any thoughts on that? On whether or not we'll see more or less of Sylas or Sylas jungle, like he said?
No, I think we're just gonna probably, like, instead of like maybe top lane Sylas and mid lane, probably more in the jungle.
Okay. So you heard it here first. Dan is thinking that we're going to see Sylas in the jungle. I'll have to check some stats just to see if that actually pans out. You never know. You never know nowadays. All right, so let's go to Ryze, because this is a pretty big change, I think. I mean, they obviously put it first. I don't play Ryze that much, so I don't know exactly what the implications are here, but I'm just going to go through it, and if you guys have any thoughts on it, actually, let me ask if you guys have any thoughts on it now before I actually read the changes here. Do you guys have any idea how this impacts Ryze at all?
So from what I've been seeing from some of my friends who do play Ryze and some of the opinions that have been popping up on the internet, this might shift him into more of a bruisery role, a tanky role. You might see him building a lot more HP and mana items. Like he already builds Rod of Ages, but maybe you'll see him building like a Lion Trees now, or a Frozen Heart. Just a lot more of the tank mana items instead of just straight AP, because they did nerf a lot of his AP ratios. Throughout the kit.
Yep.
But other than that, I don't know a ton about it. I don't play Ryze very much.
Yeah. Dan, do you got any thoughts on the Ryze changes at this point?
I feel like early game his early game got impacted a lot. Like because Ryze relies heavily on mana. Yeah. Which
they nerfed it.
Yeah, they nerfed it by 100. So I think that'll be more than, like, I think they went a bit overboard when they nerfed that much mana on Ryze.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they did up his mana regen a little bit. Obviously, you won't be able to just spam your abilities. You're going to have to kind of let the regen do its thing. But they did nerf his base mana pool by 100, which is a pretty big, that's 25%, you know. That's a pretty big nerf there. But one of the big things that you might notice on the Rift, or some of the things that I know I'll notice when you play him, is that if you ever played against Ryze and you're starting to kill him, you think you got him, and then all of a sudden this big shield, you know, pops on him, and you know that's not just his items, because I know he does build Seraphs, right? But beyond that, his Q used to give him a shield. That no longer is the case. So before, it used to be a shield. He would get a shield after consuming 2 runes on his Q. Now that's gone. And now there's only 5 ranks instead of 6, which someone might have to explain that to me, because I don't understand what the reasoning is here. So instead of having 6 ranks, it has 5. The damage did go up in early, but it's not as big late game. So it used to be starting at 60, scaling to 185. Now it starts at 80 and it scales up to 180. So only 5 damage in the late game. That's kind of negligible, I think. But one thing they did update with it as well is the spell damage bonus. So used to be starting at 40, scaling up to 80% based on Spell Flux's ranks, which is his E. Now it is 10% scaling up to 100%, and now it's based off of Realm Warp's rank, which is his ultimate. So a little bit different there, a little bit different with the interactions. And the bonus movement speed, another thing you may have noticed because Ryze moves really fast, is that it was at 25 scaling up to 40%. Now it's 20 scaling up to 40%. So a little bit of a nerf there early game on his movement speed. So that's just his Q. There's a lot of stuff right there going on, right? But one thing I guess you could pick out is that he won't be as fast early on, and he won't have that shield anymore. So I don't know about his survivability as much. Again, he could still build Seraphs, but I don't know. Any other thoughts on the Q before I move on to the W? You guys have any thoughts on what this could mean?
The reason why it had 6 ranks instead of just regular 5 is because previously the ultimate only had 2 ranks. So you only leveled it up at 6 and
makes sense. Gotcha. Yep.
So they just gave him an extra one in Q.
Gotcha.
Okay. And they took that out so that's why.
Totally makes sense. Okay. Dan, you got any thoughts on the Q before I move on? So that's something to keep in mind.
Other thoughts, yeah.
Okay, so something to keep in mind. Now, W is a pretty big change here because if you've had any experience with Ryze or played against Ryze, you know one of his biggest iconic abilities is his W, which is his Rune Prison, which would basically keep you. What is it? Is it rooted? Is it snared? What is it? You just get locked in place for a brief second. It's a root, okay. Whatever you call it, you would get stuck in place for a second. They got rid of that, right? So it's no longer a root, which is crazy. But now, instead, you are slowed by 35% for 1.5 seconds. So the CC technically is longer, but instead of you just getting rooted in place, you're slowed. Now, the spell flux bonus is that it would convert the slow to a root. So go ahead, Nighthawk.
So right now, instead of a rune prison, it's more like a rune parole officer.
Yes, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. You're not exactly in prison anymore. Although if you have the spell flux bonus, then it's converted to a root. So before the spell flux bonus used to just increase the root duration, but now with the spell flux bonus, it just changes into the normal root. Now I don't know. It doesn't say here. I don't know if that root is for 0.75 seconds or if that root is for 1.5 seconds. Well, that's pretty big then. I mean, that to me is pretty big.
So what this basically did was it turned his root into Rengar E. Rengar E is the bolo. When it hits you normally, it's just a slow like this. But when it's empowered by the 5 ferocity, then it's a root. So this is basically the exact same thing, but it's targeted. It does reduce his trade capacity in lane where he can't just root you, do a bunch of damage, and then run away before you can do anything. So it's going to make him a little less annoying to lane against, hopefully. But I wanted to note one thing, that they actually did decrease his mana costs on a lot of his abilities early game, which is hopefully going to compensate for the lower mana pool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, though, because why would they lower both the cost of his abilities, but then also lower his mana pool early on? I feel like
the only reason I can think of is because since his abilities scale off of, like, they do damage based on how much mana you have.
Yeah, they want it to do less. I got you.
They don't want you to do like a ton of damage. So by decreasing the cost, but decreasing how much mana you have, that way they can still make it so you can cast the same amount of abilities, but not actually do quite as much damage.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. Yep, and like you said, the cost of Rune Prison started at 50 before scaling to 90. Now it starts at 40, so 10 less mana. But it does scale higher in the late game to 100 mana. So, but early game, like I said, not as expensive. Any other thoughts on the W? I think this is a pretty big change because I know one of the things they said is they wanted to stop the flash W. Like that's an instant, root that they had before. Now you kind of have to be a little more strategic with it. Dan, do you have any thoughts on the W before we move on to the E?
Real quick, I just wanted to point out that they also upped the damage from 1% bonus mana damage to 4%.
Oh, good. Yeah,
which if he does actually end up building like a lot of mana, which of course Ryze will, W will actually start to be more of a threat of damage instead of just a CC, which is also nice.
Yeah. This is pretty interesting. I kind of want to try this in a custom game just to see how he feels. I mean, that's one of the things they're trying to do. They're trying to make him a little more viable, I guess, in solo queue. I don't know exactly how this does it all, but I don't know. It might be worth to try, give it a whirl. Maybe I'll find the hidden OP. I don't know. Maybe I'll climb finally out of gold 4. We'll see. But let's go to the spell flux E. You want to take this one, Nighthawk? I've been talking a lot, so if you want to read this one for me.
Yeah, I got you.
All right.
So for the E, they decreased the damage by 10 at all ranks. They decreased the mana cost by 20 early, scaling up to the same amount late game. So pretty similar to what they did with the W. So previously the way it worked was if you had a rune on a target and you eat them, the rune would bounce to all targets around it, which would be the way that he would be able to do a ton of AoE wave clear. Now it always bounces off the primary targets, but the bounces no longer do damage to enemies nearby. So they'll mark them with the spell flux, but they won't do a lot of damage. And then they also removed spreading the flux on the unit kill. So if you kill a unit that has spell flux on it, it doesn't bounce either. So I think what this basically does is it reduces his wave clear by a ton.
Yeah, definitely.
But it still gives you the option to use it sort of like a brand E, where you can spread the spell flux to other people around it, and then proc like the root or the Q bonus damage on it via the W and the Q. So this is going to make him not quite able to just run up to a lane and just kill all the minions there in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But it does make it a lot easier to actually get that spell flux to multiple targets to actually proc your Q and W with.
I mean, this makes it seem like, because I know maybe we don't see it too much in solo queue, but in pro play, it seemed like they use Ryze a lot as a split pusher, because his wave clear is incredibly fast. He had tank, he had move speed, so he did a lot of things that a split pusher usually does. I'm wondering if this basically removes that and kind of forces him more into the role of just being a team fighter, because you can't wave clear as fast. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree, disagree? I don't know. That's just what my thinking is reading this and kind of absorbing it. That's kind of the impression that I'm getting.
Without seeing it in a game, I don't know if I can really say too much. Just on paper, it does look like you're probably going to be correct. I don't really know how he deals with large waves of minions anymore. The Q is still going to be easy to like spam if you just cast your abilities correctly, but it no matter how many times you spam it, you still have to do it at least once per minion. So it's going to take a while for minions.
Yeah, he has no way to spread the damage across, which is interesting. Dan, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, because when Nighthawk was saying, right, like the bounce. So if it doesn't bounce, if it like bounces off to like just the primary target, does it like? Pretty sure it means one target around it.
I think it still does that spread thing. So let's say
it just doesn't damage them.
In the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a champion in the middle, and then you have like 5 minions around that champion. You E the champion, and then it still marks all the minions around him, but it doesn't do damage to the minions. They're just marked, so you can root them or you could do bonus damage. I don't really know what the point of that is. I guess it's just so you can mark a lot of targets and root them all. But I don't know.
Exactly.
I played a little bit of Ryze.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like I just know that the E just like spreads around to other champions if you mark one and if you like queue them or something.
And it still does the mark. It's just not going to damage. So in team fights, that's kind of your AOE there, and it's not going to be doing that anymore. But you do have the option to choose what you want to do to those marked targets. So they're still allowing you the ability to enable your W or your Q onto other targets, but you can't use your spell flux anymore to kind of do AoE damage to champions or minions, which is interesting because I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. But let's move on to the R Realm Warp. So the ranks, this is another thing. So ranks used to have 2 ranks, now it has 3 ranks. So this is new. The warp damage, overload damage bonus against targets with flux, increased to 40, scaling to 100%. And then new close enough immediately cast at max range when attempting to cast beyond that. So the minimum cast range has gotten buffed. It used to be 730. Now it's been buffed up to 1,000. And the max cast range starts lower at 1750. Or excuse me, it used to start lower at 1750 and scaling up to 3,000. Now it's just 3,000. And the cooldown is actually lower late game, but early game it's actually higher. I'm not quite sure. Maybe Nighthawk, you can clarify. What does the warp damage mean? Targets with flux
previously, on Ryze's Q, when they're affected by spell flux, your Q does bonus damage to them. That's still a thing. But instead of scaling off the Q rank, so previously it was 40 to 80% based on what Q rank was. So your Q would do 40% bonus damage if they had spell flux on them, up to 80%. Now it's based on Realm Warp. So it actually gates his Q damage by quite a lot because you have to wait to get to level 11 or level 6, 11, and 16 to increase it by a lot. Because you get rank 5 Q at like level 10 or 12, right? Something really early. But now you have to wait all the way until level 16 to get all that damage. So and that seems like a nerf too. I think you're right. I think this is overall a big nerf.
It seems like that. And from what I had heard around like the chatter and what I'd seen is that people were saying that Ryze was nerfed to the ground, basically. I mean, again, I don't know if that's just overreaction, but by reading it and reading it out loud now, it does seem like they gutted him pretty bad. Because it's like, what is he now? Like, I don't know what his identity is really, because like, honestly, like, what does he do? Like, if anybody can tell me, I don't know. Like, what is his identity now?
Even before level 6, previously Spellflux would do 40% damage increase on Overload, just at rank 1. Yeah. Now it only does 10% more damage at rank 1, until you get your ult. Yeah. So he doesn't have early damage. He doesn't have wave clear.
Nope.
He doesn't have his late game damage is a little higher, I guess, but he doesn't have a easily spammable root. I just don't really see how.
No easily spammable root, doesn't have a shield anymore for his survivability. He doesn't have movement speed anymore.
His movement speed got toned down.
He has nothing. I don't really know what he could do. His range is not that. It's not like his range got increased where he's more of like a, long range caster. He's got to get up in your face and he's going to just be a sitting duck.
The only real compensation buffs I see are the more damage on W and then the ult having higher range, which is really not that big of a deal. I don't think
we'll be seeing Ryze now like that often.
You think even in competitive?
Yeah, I think in competitive, I think they can make it work because of his ult, but his early game, I think it's like not. I wouldn't say nerf to the ground because like they compensated some of his base stats, the mana, with the regen and some of the damage, but mostly. But Ryze relies heavily on mana. Yeah. Like from my experience, like if you don't get that tiers like the first back, and if you die like let's say like before you can even purchase your first tier, your tier, I don't think he'll be that useful. Yeah, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea unless we're missing something major, which is always possible. I just don't see how.
I mean, is what we just read.
Ryze.
Yeah, I don't think, honestly, I'm going to call it right now, but I really don't think he's going to be played in pro because I think they're trying to make it where, yes, you have a little more range, to work with, right? So maybe that gets you to an objective faster or whatever. And, that's kind of nice. But again, I think he loses identity. You can't use him as a split pusher. He's not really a safe mage because they removed a lot of his kit, like I said, his shield, movement speed, all of that stuff. He can't AoE damage really. I really don't see how pros can utilize him. Like, I don't think it's that much of a pick in pro just because of his ult. And they nerfed the ult cooldown at level 1, so it's super long. You would have to get the super late game, and the way the meta's going now with faster games, faster tempo, I really don't know if Ryze will be picked at all. That'll be my prediction, I guess, to see what happens, but.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think this might be Ryze's attempt at sort of leveling the playing field with his kit and then building him back up to the point where he might be strong again without having like so many pieces of broken abilities in his kit.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe he's just dead until next patch. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see how he gets played in this state.
Honestly, I don't think it's going to be that much of a blow for most of you out there as solo queue players because, to be honest, he's not really playing that much as solo queue. Nobody plays him. And if you are, then you are either like dedicated or what, because he is not the greatest solo queue player. In fact, side note is that whenever I see a Ryze on my team, I just know it's going to be a rough time because usually, in my elo at least, it's not going to pan out well. But let's move on. Let's move on to Yuumi. That's a whole nother discussion. So Yuumi right now, like we've been talking about this, Yuumi is just broken, busted. Like he's so, or she's so fun. I mean, she does a lot of really cool things, different play style, but she was a little overtuned. We saw in LCS, she's been the second most banned champion, and the few times that she's gone through, it's pretty much been overwhelmingly wins. There's just so much she can do. She makes it very hard to play. There's not a lot of counterplay because she can just hide in a champ. So they are nerfing her a bit. So here's what they did. Base stats. They buffed her base health from 432 to 480 because she's fairly squishy, especially if she's out by herself. But with the passive bop and block, the mana refund got nerfed early on. It used to be 40 scaling to 160. Now it's 30 scaling to 160. And then the shield got nerfed late game. So it used to be 80 scaling to 360 plus 0.4 ability power. Now it's 80 scaling to 300 plus 0.3 ability power. Because if you aren't familiar with Yuumi, kind of one of the playstyles you want to do is step out of your opponent, auto attack, and then jump back into your opponent because you get the shield, you get a mana refund, and that's how it worked. But what they're saying is that late game, that shield is redonkulous. It's pretty big, and that's kind of some of the gripes. She's probably one of the hardest scaling enchanters, I think, out there. So they kind of took a shot to that. You guys have any thoughts on this passive at all? I don't think it's that much, but what do you guys think?
Well, the 60 damage off the level 18 shield is pretty big, but the 0.10 AP ratio is actually huge because
that's true.
The main build that a lot of Yuumis have been going gets you to almost 800 AP late game if you're playing well, which is absolutely ridiculous. You go Magi's, Rabadon's, Redemption, Ardent Censor, and Athene's and Holy Grail, and then last item is a freebie for whatever you want. So you get a ridiculous amount of AP. So overall, all of these changes, there's like no compensation here. This is just a straight up nerf to every part of Yuumi's kit. Like the health buff is nice, I guess, but if you're playing Yuumi properly,
you shouldn't need that.
That shouldn't matter. you shouldn't be taking any damage.
Yeah, so we'll have to see because she definitely felt like you could spam that passive over and over again, and it was pretty easy. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see if it's enough of a nerf to actually make a difference, but it does sound like it will be. But we'll have to see how that plays out. Now with the Q, they just basically fixed a bug where the missile would not spawn towards the cursor as intended. So I experienced this bug, and I know some of y'all might just say that I'm a bad Yuumi player, Dan. I'm not bad. This is a bug, man, because there were several times you can see it on stream where I'm like, where'd it go? I'm like, what happened? Yeah. So apparently it was a bug. Fixed it. See, so I'm not bad.
There was also a hotfix that went out today. This patch introduced a bug with her Q that made it cost double mana when you were attached to somebody.
Wow. Okay.
So that got fixed. And then there was another change that I'll find and read later. So if you were playing Yuumi today and you're like, man, I'm running out of mana.
Mana a lot. It's not just the nerfs, not just the passive nerfs. Apparently, it's a bug. All right. Well, while you're looking up that, let's move on to the W. So you and me. So enemies now gain an assist on Yuumi when damaging the ally Yuumi is attached to. Oh, I didn't know that they weren't getting that assist. That's interesting. Okay, updated. Shared adaptive force was at 5 scaling to 21% of her attached allies' adaptive force. Now it's 5 scaling to 13 flat adaptive force plus 4 scaling to 16% of her attached allies' adaptive force. So they're splitting it up now to have flat damage or flat adaptive force plus scaling. I don't know how the numbers work out, honestly. I don't know if that's overall stronger. Or
I've done a bit of the math for this. Because my friend was really upset about it. I thought these changes weren't that big of a nerf because I'm like, it's only 5% adaptive force. It's not that much. You lose about 60 AP, 60 to 70 adaptive force late game for your ally. So your ally loses 70 adaptive force, which is a pretty big deal. And then you lose, depending on who you're sitting on, obviously, if you're sitting on a Jhin, it's a lot. But if you're sitting on like a Darius, it's really not that big of a deal, or like a Malphite. And then the flat adaptive force is just there. So if you're sitting on somebody who has like no stats at all, you're not like giving them nothing, and they're not.
Yeah, you have something.
So if you're sitting on Maokai or something.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, this is a fairly big nerf to how ridiculous her W was on champions that wanted a lot of adaptive force.
Yeah, definitely. And so what they also did is before Yumi's dash could only be interrupted by knockups and knockbacks, now it can be interrupted by any immobilizing CC. So I think previously, and I don't know if this has worked, but I think you could bait out like a Lux Q or something like that. And if you timed it right, you could dodge it. I'm not good enough to actually know that, but I think that's what it was.
There was a really cool interaction with your W. If you're sitting between yourself, so I'll set the scene for you. There's your AD carry. There's a Caitlyn trap right here. Yeah. And then you're on the other side of the Caitlyn trap. If you W to your AD carry, you'll go over the Caitlyn trap, trigger it, but still reach your AD carry.
There you go.
This change removes that. You can no longer do that.
There you go.
So it was like a safe way to clear CC traps in lane.
Very smart, Riot. Okay, and then they fixed a bug where she would detach unintentionally when trying to attach to another champion outside of her range. Again, happened to me when I was playing. So, again, I'm not bad. It was bugged. So we're just gonna throw that out there. Okay. Did you find what you were looking for, Nighthawk? I know you said you were like looking up something.
Hold up.
I don't even remember what it was.
Okay. Bug fixes.
All right, so that was the bug fix, and so some quality of life changes. Spectator mode, range rings for Yumi's QWR no longer show on spectator mode. Yeah, interesting. Sneaky sneaks. Yumi now gains the same stealth screen overlay and fade on her model when attached to a champion in stealth. Okay. And then the ally that Yumi's attached to now has a ring around them that only Yumi can see. I guess that makes it more visually easier for Yumi players, because I will say that, when there's a big team fight going on and I'm hopping from ally to ally, sometimes I lose track of where I'm at. So I don't know if this is more for just visual reference of like, now you know where you are for sure. Because I've been sometimes I'll look at like the front line when I'm actually attached to the back line and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, my Q's not going to reach that person or whatever. So anyways, that's the Yumi changes. Overall, it looks like a nerf. I don't know how big of a nerf this will be as far as like what happens in solo queue. We'll just have to test that out, but for sure an overall nerf. And
I found the other bug fix. Apparently when she was interrupted from Wing somebody, so if you're CC'd while you're Wing to somebody, there was a bug where it would lock you out of using your spells for a long time. Like you couldn't Q or E or anything. So they fixed that. So
nice.
More bugs, hopefully.
Nice. Okay, and so now we can go on to the simple champion changes. So first is Aatrox. Again, Aatrox has been also another high priority pick in LCS and even in solo queue. This is a champ I ban out often. Main reason is being because of that movement speed and because of his healing. It's ridiculous. And so what they've done now is they've changed some of it. So the passive cooldown now scales based on level, and the R healing bonus now only applies to self-healing, because I've got to tell you, Yumi and Aatrox is one of the most deadliest combos because seriously, like you could speed the crap out of them. It's not even fair. And same with like Soraka. If he had a Soraka there, it was just nuts. So the passive Deathbringer
absolutely insane.
Yeah, it was insane, man. So I'm glad they did this. But let's look. Passive Deathbringer stance was at 15 seconds at all ranks. Now it starts at 24 seconds, which should make his early game not as frustrating to play against. 24 seconds, and then it scales down to 12. So late game, it will be pretty fast, faster than normal, but early game, at least you shouldn't have too much of a headache or as much of a headache laning against him. And then R, the World Ender, the healing bonus used to come from all incoming healing. Now it's just self-healing only from his passive. So any thoughts on this?
Yeah.
I think it's just nicer. It makes him not as annoying, honestly, but I think he'll still be pretty good.
The W change is a pretty big nerf, or sorry, the passive change is a pretty big nerf to his jungle and his top lane, just because you won't be healing quite so much every 5 seconds or so. Because
like I said, not as annoying.
Production worked. Yeah. And then that R change, just to double up on what you were saying, if you build a Spirit Visage on Aatrox, which is a good item to have on him, and you had a Yumi or a Soraka, it would legitimately more than double their healing on you. So like 100 or 200 heal would heal for 400, which is absolutely insane.
So dumb. Yeah, it was a broken combo. But Dan, did we lose you? I see you froze on. Oh, you're there. Okay. You got any thoughts on this? You got any thoughts on Aatrox? Yeah.
So basically, they nerfed him. So
just a small nerf.
Yeah. smaller.
Okay. Oops.
I guess late game he'll kind of be strong, right?
Yeah.
But then thank goodness they. But I don't think Aatrox was an early game champion, was he? First place?
He had his moments.
The thing is, yeah, he was okay early, but it would get frustrating because he could heal pretty big and pretty often. So this kind of alleviates that a little bit. So okay, let's move on to Ashe. So I like this. Basically, Ashe doesn't have a lot of ways to keep enemies at bay. She doesn't have any dashes or anything like that. So the only way to really keep people away is her W, and they lower the cooldown of it. What do you think about this? I mean, so on one hand, I think that's good, but on the other hand, it costs a lot of mana. Like, you can't just spam W's anyways. Like, if you spam your W off cooldown, you'll be out of mana ASAP. So the fact that they lowered the cooldown, I don't really know if that does anything.
I mean,
at least
it's not
early
really
game.
that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then,
this is such a small change.
Yeah, it is so small change.
So Ashe W is really one of the most obnoxious forms of poke in the AD carry toolkit.
Yes.
It covers literally the entire lane, and the only way to really dodge it is to hide behind minions, which doesn't always work. So it's smart that they're not really giving it a lot more power. I think they're just kind of toying with Ashe, because Ashe is one of those AD carries that is like a linchpin for being ridiculous, because she has so much utility in her kit. She doesn't just straight up damage, which she does do a decent amount of damage. She also has a huge slow on auto attacks, which is insane. And then also a really nice cross map CC if you can land it. So they're being very careful with Ashe here, which I think is the right call.
Sure. Yep. So I guess they're going to play around with that. Same thing with Caitlyn. So they want to give Caitlyn some early love. And it's only 2 damage. So they based her attack damage from 58 to 60. So it's only 2 attack damage that they buffed it. And I think they're trying to be really careful because Caitlyn is a lane bully. So her auto attacks, her range, that's what makes her hard to lane against. And maybe she wasn't faring as well in that identity, so they felt like they needed to give her a little nudge, and I think that's why maybe they give a little bit of buff, but not too much. What are your thoughts on this? I don't know if it's big to really do anything. Oh, okay, Dan has got something. He's an ADC main, so I know he's ready. Okay.
Okay, so Caitlyn has always been like this champion, right? Where like early game, she'll always so like really good AD carry players, even if you don't play that much Caitlyn, they'll try to bully you out of lane, right? So with that extra 2 damage, she could definitely do that more. But like, Caitlyn's been strong, right? Like she's been like with that W, her traps. I believe her traps got nerfed or the recent patch.
I know her traps actually got buffed.
It got buffed.
So she was still annoying, right? Like. But with that 2 extra damage, like, because she has the highest, so I think.
Hey Dan, I'm gonna pause you real quick because you seem to be cutting in and out. Why don't you try to reconnect, and then we'll get your thoughts on that again. Yeah, try to reconnect, and then we'll get back to you. So while Dan's doing that, let's go ahead and move on to Irelia. So Irelia, the E cooldown is increased and the range is decreased, and so. I feel like Irelia, I mean, I guess she's good, right? Pros pick her a lot, but whenever I played her, man, I felt like she was hard. And so, I don't know, like maybe this, you got to be real careful now with your E. Like it's going to be a bigger punishment if you miss it. And so the cooldown, like I said, it was starting at 14 seconds. Now it's at 18 seconds starting. And then it scales down to 12. And then the range is even lower from 850 to 775. So, you got to be real careful because it takes a longer time to get back up, and your range isn't as far. What do you think, Nighthawk?
Yeah, Aurelia's been seeing a lot of play in the mid lane still, just because she has such a powerful all-in. When she actually commits to a fight, she can 1v2 really easily with her ult. So I don't think this really changes that at all. It just makes it a lot less easy for her to use her E, and then if it doesn't connect, you can just back off and play safe for 14 seconds or however long. So this is going to require her to either play safe for a longer bit or maybe commit even without the E landing, which makes her a lot less powerful.
Exactly, definitely.
I don't think this is a huge change, especially because it is you do max E, I believe either last or second to last. So it is a pretty big nerf on that side. Because you do lose 4 to 2 seconds. Cooldown. But she'll still be played. It's Aurelia.
Honestly, I think if you're good with Aurelia already, I think you'll easily adjust to this. It might take a game or two to get used to it, but honestly, I think if you're just mediocre or terrible like myself, this is going to make you not want to play this champ even more. Because I tried playing Aurelia for a month, and Valcor knows it did not last. I just wanted to beat my brains out because I couldn't play this champ. Anyways, let's go back to Caitlyn now that Dan's back. So you were talking about, Dan, with the buffs. What are your thoughts on this? You said, you know, the W's been buffed. Her attack damage is buffed. What were you saying about her early game now?
I mean, even though it's small, like good ADC players will still like abuse this in some sense.
Yeah, I think you're right because, I mean, the way you bully is basically by auto-attacking your enemy every time you get a chance. So when they're going to last hit, you outrange them, you auto-attack. And if you do this often, that 2 damage is going to add up, you know? So I guess in that sense, for sure, it's going to definitely buff her. But we'll have to see, I guess, if it makes a huge difference, like in a sense of, oh my gosh, she's top tier. Because at the moment, I still feel like there's better ADCs at the moment, like Kaiser being one. You know, I still think Vayne is decently strong, and even Jinx are really strong. Draven. So I don't think that Caitlyn is in a super power spot, and I don't know if this brings her into that level, but we'll have to wait and see. And I think that's what they're trying to do, is be cautious with it. But let's move on to Karma. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, according to the guy who actually orchestrated this buff, he's expecting a 1% win rate increase. Like, they actually have like a chart at Riot where they like, if you increase base stats by this, their win rate will go up by this. So it's actually really fun to see that Riot actually has like, they have like math on what these changes actually should do. And they're always refining it based on each patch, which is really cool. I think that's really cool.
Speaking of that, like, this is totally off topic, but kind of in the sense of what you were saying is that, did you see that transparency thing they had where they have all this criteria of when a champ gets buffed or nerfed? Yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool, man. So anyways, that was just something I thought.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of good stuff. I think it's because people have been complaining a lot about the Blans team recently. So they've really been trying to show what actually goes into changes instead of just somebody on the Riot Balance team lost to this champion.
So they want to be, Oh man, the power they have. Jeez. Okay. Shoot, if it was me, I'd be buffing all of my champions. Anyways.
They accept PayPal donations for nerfing.
I know, right? Who can I become friends with at Riot that I can get my champion buffed?
The Balance team identity is strictly guarded.
I know, right? You gotta have like security clearance to like nobody knows who they are. Man, that's interesting. We could make a movie out of that. Anyways, wow. That was a tangent. Okay, let's go on to Karma. Her Q slow increase, E cost decrease, movement speed duration increase to match shield duration. So they're buffing her a little bit. They want to give her more tools to help her survive, especially when she's caught up by herself. So her Q Inner Flame, the slow is increased by 10% from 25 to 35%. And if you got hit by it, it's a pretty big slow. So Inspire, her E, the cost has gone down from 60 to 50 starting, and it now scales to 70 mana, whereas opposed it was 80 before. And the movement speed duration was at 1.5 seconds, has scaled to 2.5. So it matches the shield duration, because before I guess it was mismatched there. So not huge buffs, but definitely nice to have. Do you guys have any thoughts on Karma?
Between the Q change and the E change, this helps Karma keep her AD carry sticking to targets a lot better, especially if they're like really, really short range AD carries like Vayne or Kai'Sa. I think the E change is really nice for matching her with short range AD carries, because you just put the E on them and they get the move speed boost is actually pretty significant. So having it for another second is a really nice change. So I think this might make Karma a little more meta. She's pretty bad right now, so it would be nice to see her.
Maybe I'll just bring her in the top lane again. I don't know. Tank Karma. We'll see. What'd you say, Dan?
I was also going to say maybe we could see Karma mid lane with that.
Hey, I'm with it. Let's go. Honestly, I don't think so.
It makes Tank Karma top even more obnoxious.
I'm bringing it back, baby. I love that. I love that build. Anywho, if you've never played Tank Karma, look it up. You'll have the best fun of your life. Just annoying people. It's the best.
Oh,
okay.
So bad.
All right. So Lulu, they're buffing her a little bit. So they want to help bring her back into consideration. They also updated her visual effects to make her magic feel more unique and improve her gameplay clarity. So visual effects update. So basic attack, new purplier missiles in hit effects. All the skins cleaned up to match new effects on the base skin. And Dragon Trainer Lulu Pix now shoots out small pink fireballs. So another reason you should buy more Riot skins. All right, Riot, take my money. Okay, let's go to the E help picks. So the shield was 70, scaling to 210. Now it's 80, scaling to 220. The mana cost was 60, scaling to 100. Now it's 60, scaling to 80. That's pretty good. And then again, they cleaned up some of the shields with the visual effects, improved Pix's teleport and hit effects. The passive, they cleaned up Pix's bolts. So these are all visual effects things. Yeah, they're all just visual effects except for that shield buff. What do you guys think about that? I mean, that does help her. You know, I mean,
I believe Riot was talking about this in their transparency report. They were talking about why they made these changes, and I think they said that this was like the most they could do without jeopardizing making her a really strong solo lane threat again, which is something that they don't like. So
yeah, because you will see that sometimes.
Careful. Yeah, it pops up every now and then, and it's just so obnoxious for enemy laners. So they're very cautious about that, which is why this is such a small buff, even though Lulu is kind of not seen very much right now.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't know if that's just because there's so many other cool supports, I guess, to play. Because I think Lulu is still a pretty good pick into a lot of comps, especially with her ultimate. I mean, there's so many good uses for it, I think. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I think there's just a lot of sexier champions out there, like, to play support with, you know?
Like Yumi or Soraka
exactly.
Or Nico. I think
Nico, yep.
The problem that Lulu suffers with is that she is sort of like a jack of all trades. She does decent damage and she does decent shields and heals. But she's not like the best at either of those roles. If you want a damage support, you're going to have something like Brand, or you're going to have something like Lux. Or if you want a shield support or a heal support, you're going to have something like Soraka or Yumi or Nami or something like that. So she's just, it's one of those champions where it's just like not enough in any position. So even though she does everything somewhat decently, she can't shine just because she doesn't outshine anyone.
I mean, and if you think about it, like, the fact is that that's probably why she's played in solo lanes, right? Because she can do a decent amount of damage. She can stay alive pretty easily. She's hard to gank, honestly. But then when it comes to team fighting, like, she's pretty useful. You know what I mean? So I could see how sometimes she might be taken on a solo lane because you're safe. You're safe. You do decent damage, and then team fights, you add a lot of value to your team. So we'll have to see what that does. But it's a nice little buff there. So Master Yi. Basically just a bug. They fixed a bug where Master Yi's double strike stacks were lasting 3 seconds instead of 4. Now Nautilus, they did nerf his early damage on Q, because Nautilus, as you know, is the #1 support right now on most tier list sites. So Dredgeline was starting at 100 damage, scaling to 280. Now it starts at 80. Scaling to 280, so 20 less damage. Do you think this is enough? And I'm asking both of you guys, do you think this is enough to knock him off his throne? To me personally, I don't think so. Both of you guys are nodding your heads no.
So.
Aftershock is the main reason why he's so insane in the support right now. And in mid lane. So this does almost nothing to counter that. It makes it so that his early all-ins are a little less powerful, but just landing the hook is so important. I think even if the hook did 0 damage, he'd still be really strong in support, just because of how strong he is on setting up CC.
And maybe this is a kind of a nerf more so to mid Nautilus, because I mean, with that damage nerf, I mean, it's not like he was doing a ton of damage, but he did so much CC, and with Aftershock and all that stuff, he was kind of viable, right? So maybe this knocks him out of viability. I don't know.
I think I don't know. Do you max Q on Nautilus mid?
No,
I don't actually know that. If you do, okay, all right. Well, that actually is a pretty big change then. But if you were to max Q on Nautilus mid, by the time you're actually going in and attacking people, the change would be so minor that it doesn't matter. But since you max E, it does make a little bit of an impact.
Yeah, because your level 1 Q is not going to do that much damage. So
yeah.
Anyways, that's something to note if you're a Nautilus main. At support, you're still probably going to be good. If you play mid Nautilus, maybe you want to just at least know that change going in there. Because if you're used to a certain damage amount and then it's not as much, that's why. All right, let's move on to the Kench. This guy, I ban. This is my #1 ban. Not necessarily. I don't even play top lane. The problem is that no matter who, like, if I just ban him because none of my top laners can handle him. And trust me, I've played him a couple lanes, top lanes. I suck, and I was still destroying people. That's how I know it's OP, because I'm destroying people.
This champion is such a dichotomy of ridiculousness. So against melee champions, I legitimately think that there are like maybe only one melee champion in the game that can then actually win against him in the top lane in like a 1v1. Like maybe Alawi and maybe Darius, but I don't even think Darius. But ranged champions usually just destroy them, at least in the early game. So having that, like, being so strong, Tom Kench was ridiculous. And I think a long time ago when we did the patch run notes for these changes, I was in the camp that he was going to be like ridiculous in the top lane, and I feel like there was a little bit of hesitation there where people were like, "Oh, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead." But now that people actually see that he's insane, I don't think that these changes really nerf his top lane that much at all. I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but I usually max W last, and I didn't really use it for that much damage. I think most of your damage kind of comes from the Q and the passive. So this is just like a little nerf to Tom Kench. I think he's still going to be really strong.
And I think maybe that's why, because I know his early game was super oppressive, like literally level 2 or even 3. You could just start smacking them and that's it. Like they can't do anything. So maybe it's to tune down that really early game. But he's still good. Yeah, I agree with you in the fact that I think he's still going to be pretty decent. His scaling is still the same. In fact, his damage scaling is higher early. So let me just read it. So the base damage got nerfed. So it was 100 to 2 scaling to 240. Now it's 60 scaling to 240, but the scaling is different. So before it was plus 0.5 scaling to 13% target maximum health. Now it's plus 0.9 or plus 9 scaling to 30. So I'm like,
this does nothing.
I don't really know if that does anything.
Kench is still insane. There's like, okay, so you're losing 40 damage, but you're gaining 4% max health. So even if you don't level up W again past the first level until like level,
it's still
13,
good.
It's still good, and it's still gonna, like, most of the damage comes from the Q doing a ridiculous amount of damage and the passive doing a ridiculous amount of damage.
Yeah,
and like you don't even use W for CC because you just auto attack them 3 times and stun them for a minute.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they know something that we don't, but I'm just reading this, and the more that I read it, the more I'm like, like I think Tom Kench is just laughing right now.
The other changes, I don't really understand what those were for. Okay, so there was a pretty big change with this. The bug fix that made it so when he QW'd, would cost no mana. That was a pretty big change, because what he could do previously is if he ate a minion while queuing it, it wouldn't cost any mana. They did get rid of that. But I don't think that makes him terrible.
Okay.
And then the random ally change where
I don't know. I don't
spit people out. I don't know.
I don't even know if it's worth mentioning. Whatever. If you guys are that interested, just read it. It's like it's not even. That's not the problem with Tom Kench right now.
If you're playing him in the top lane, you're not even eating it out.
You're not even eating it out. Yeah, forget about it. All right, Dan, do you got any thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I have no thoughts on that.
He's just ban him. Just ban him. Just ban him. #1 advice, ban him. All right, let's go to Zach, because I know Meteos had even made a mention of how Zach was poop after the last patch because of his revert. So it looks like they're trying to give him a little bit of love. So they increased the W base damage and the R knockback distance, and chunk spawn adjusted. All right, so W unstable matter was at 15 scaling to 75 damage. Now it's 25 scaling to 85. So 10 damage buff on all levels. And then R, let's bounce. The knockback distance was 400 units away from Zach. Now it's 250 units from where target is hit. And then cell division chunk spawn. Yeah, go ahead. Explain this.
If you listen to our last podcast, when we were talking about Zach in 9.11, we mentioned that they changed the knockback from where Zach is, so like the center of his model, to or they changed it from this, so the outside of where the target is, into the center of the model. So it actually ended up being that it wouldn't knock targets back very far. Yeah. So they basically just reverted that to previously, so now it's hitting them away from where they are. So even though the number goes down, the knockback in most situations is going to go up. So you're going to be knocking the champions further away, which is nice.
Definitely. Okay. And it says for the Cell Division chunk spawn, each bounce that hits one or more enemy champions spawns a chunk. Hitting the same enemy still spawns a chunk.
That's nice too, because
that's nice. Yeah. Keeps them healthy, right?
The W damage, I also wanted to point out, 10 isn't a lot. You're correct. But on an ability that's so spammable, because whenever you pick up a passive chunk on W, it resets the cooldown by like a second. So it is a pretty spammable ability. This is going to help him clear camps a lot faster and a lot safer early game, which is nice. So
good to know. I wish Kevin was here, because he's a Zach man. I wonder if he would know. I have to get back with him.
I don't think this is like the change that makes Zach like pick ban broken, but I think this is definitely a good step in the right direction. I think there'll probably one more pretty big change in 9.13 if they don't reach what they want to with this change, and then he'll probably be really good.
Can we possibly see AP Zach?
Maybe. I think you can see a low AP like a Ryze Lion Tree Zach. I don't think we'll see full AP Zach very often.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, well, all you Zach players, hopefully that appeases your anger for now at least, and we'll see if they give him a little more love in future patches. But finally, the last change is an item change, Corrupting Pot. I actually think this is pretty big, just because it's a common starting item for a lot of champions. So basically, they nerfed the bonus magic damage so it doesn't scale. So before it was 15 scaling to 30 over 3 seconds. Now it's 15 at all levels. So I guess early on it's not too bad. Later on, is that negligible that it doesn't do 30 damage later? I mean, I don't know.
So the main issue with Corrupting Potion was that it's a really, really strong starting item, which is great. But people held on for it for so long into the late game just because having free sustain in the late game is really nice on a champion that doesn't have sustain. So having it scale up to do 30 damage over 3 seconds, it's not a lot of damage, and this change isn't really that big of a nerf, but it's enough to where it won't be like the deciding factor in duels. Like at all. Before it really wasn't, but now it won't be like at all. So
for sure,
it's a nice little nerf. I don't think previously they were going to nerf the charges. They were only going to make it 2 charges instead of 3.
Ooh,
so I'm glad they didn't decide to do that, and they just went with this nerf instead, because I think that would have killed the item, which for sure. I don't like killing items.
Yeah. Okay, Dan, you got any thoughts on? I don't think you as an ADC ever go Corrupting Pot, but okay.
One special note that I wanted to touch on. They redid Amumu's VFX this patch. They look fantastic. So if you like Amumu, even after the nerf, he's still insane. So check him out. He looks really good.
Nice. Okay. All right. So one last thing before we go, from each of you guys, and you can make this as bold as you want. Predict the meta here. What do you think the biggest? What's your biggest prediction for this meta coming into 9.12? And don't hold back here. You can think about it a little bit, but anybody can start here.
I'm gonna guess. Okay. I'm gonna guess that Mordekaiser either gets a hotfix nerf or he gets a nerf next patch. I think he's really, really strong.
Okay. What lane do you think you'll see him the most in? I know you said you think he can be played in every lane, which I also agree with that. But what do you think we'll see him most at?
I think just because he's like ingrained in everyone's mind, he's going to be played in the top lane the most. But I do think you'll see a lot of Mordekaiser jungle. I think he's going to be really fun.
I've seen it a couple times already, but maybe that's just because they will play him any role they can. But okay,
people will play him anywhere.
I mean, I'll play him wherever. I just want to play him. Dan, do you got any big predictions for 9.12? What's your meta prediction, man?
No Yumis.
No Yuri's? He just doesn't want me to play.
She's still here.
I think she'll still be here. Honestly, I think if you're a good Yumi player, it's still really hard to stop you. And I think she'll still be okay. So, personally, I don't really know. Like, I don't have any big predictions. So we'll just have to see, because I'm a jungler, so honestly, nothing was touched for me here. I think I might still play all the same things that I play. I do think Elise is OP though. She's been OP, but I think like her scaling is even better now. I don't know if it's her scaling or she just seems ridiculously strong. Even in mid game, maybe not super late, but even early late game. But anywho, that's all the time we got today. Thank you to my hosts, Grandy Man and Nighthawk, for joining me. If you have any questions at all or feedback, you can email us at theallinpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at theallinpodcast. But guys, until next time, enjoy your climb on Summoner's Rift. Try not to be too toxic, please. I can't, in fact, before we go, there is a bug. If you full mute all, you cannot ping. I tried this, I tested it. And so I cannot full mute all, because I used to do that sometimes. And so I told Dan, now I can't block out the toxicity, which means I'll probably go on tilt easier. So guys.
So what? No. Real quick, what you can do, take your chat and move it off the screen.
That's true. You could do that.
Or just put a very small size.
That's right.
Or, yeah,
okay.
Or make it really tiny.
So I'm going to have to find ways to not get toxic. But guys, enjoy your climb. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Peace. Hey, thank you.